for having me, Martha. Very happy to be here. So yeah, real quick about me. Well, I'm in Seattle, out the window in Seattle. It's actually sunny out right now. And I started my career as a biostatistician doing clinical trial work, and then moved over to become a science journalist about 15 years ago, and have been covering primarily medicine, public health, environment since then. And then, yeah, a few years ago, obviously, I dove deeply into one topic and wrote this book, which was published in September on circadian rhythms. So that's, I'm happy to, answer any further questions later, but I'm gonna, I just created a short little slideshow. Maybe it could be a little refresher for those that finished the book, or at least fill in gaps for those that didn't, and some visuals that will maybe bring some of it to life. So let's see if I can make this work. Okay. Oh, great, come on. If we do this, okay. Are we good? Can you see my?
We're good.
Okay, great. Okay, so I thought I'd start with, that one time that I went camping in a sunflower field. So I'd heard that idea that sunflowers follow the sun, and that was actually a bit of a misnomer. So I found a very nice family that let me sleep next to their sunflower maze as it was growing, and ended up just kind of tracking what was happening in that field through the night. So first picture is right before sunset. I kind of kept track of one particular sunflower bulb. The second picture is that plant at 10 p.m., about when I went to bed. The next one was at 3 a.m. when I decided to wander through the maze with my little red headlamp, creeping myself out. And then finally at, I believe that was 6 a.m. in the morning. So as you can see, between the two middle pictures, darkness, had descended, and the flower or the plant was moving. And then in the morning at, the 3 a.m. Position, it didn't change before the sun came up. So what was going on here? Obviously, this is an example or some evidence that the plant was not responding directly to light and dark or any other environmental change. Based on some research that goes way back about a century. But yeah, it was already prepared for the arrival of the sun. And it wasn't until 2016 that researchers at UC Davis, as I talk about in the book, proved that sunflowers actually do have these internal clocks that anticipate changes in the environment to allow them to function at their best. And they figured out that like a sunflower that's facing the sunrise is going to warm up earlier, and that's going to benefit it as far as attracting pollinators and its growth and everything else. And so sunflowers weren't just following the sun, they were anticipating it. And this is, as I learned through writing the book, it's examples across the entire planet. We evolved on life evolved on a pirouetting planet with, the planet spins, it orbits around the sun with a slight tilt, which creates ever-changing environments. And that ever-changing environment's also, changing across the year with the seasons. So for all species, it benefited them to anticipate these changes. And that could be, for a plant, they're kind of the primary example because they're stuck in the ground. So they're responding directly, or the 24-hour light cycle is very impactful on them, of course. But then you've got things like salmon. Research has shown that they use day length changes to time their migration and their spawning. And then even everything to parasites. We've discovered that the malaria parasite here actually hitches its internal clocks to its host and to vectors, mosquito vectors, that it actually has its own rhythm as well. So this idea of circadian rhythms really does pervade all of life. And that includes people. So we all have trillions of clocks within our bodies that are all trying to tick in coordination to prime our bodies to do the right things at the right times. As we know, that's, sleep, that's metabolize food, dodge UV radiation, defend ourselves against pathogens. Essentially, all of the things our physiology does across the days relies on this coordination of these inner clocks. But these clocks within us don't tick at precisely 24 hours a day. That's where the circa and circadian comes from. So we need to be regularly calibrated from the environment to make sure that we are still hitched to the 24-hour Earth day. And that's where these cues come in. So various things in our environment and how we live, our behavior, is going to keep those rhythms in sync with the sun. And the primary one among them, of course, is the sun itself. So we might, when we eat, temperature changes, there's a lot of various things that could influence it, but the primary cue is indeed the sun. And then, of course, since, these clocks all don't tick at precisely 24 hours, they all tick a little differently for all of us. And some of our clocks run a little faster. Some of our clocks run a little slower. In the book, I interviewed many people who kind of fall at the extreme end of that spectrum. I spoke with one man whose clock ticked pretty short. And so he would have a hard time falling asleep or hard time staying awake past like 7 p.m., which got him into a lot of trouble falling asleep, at the dinner table or at concerts and such. And then the other extreme, I interviewed a lady who could not fall asleep, before the early hours in the morning. She was a true night owl and ultimately found a career that allowed her to work through the night. So we have this chronodiversity, you might say. And scientists suggest there was an advantage to this evolutionarily, because if we all tick a little differently, awake at different hours of the day, that meant that there was somebody always awake to be on the lookout for maybe an invading, enemy or bear or such. So there's reason for our madness. And also our rhythms change throughout our lives too. I talk a lot about, in particular, the teenage years, where our biology naturally drifts later. So our clock, we become more naturally a night owl, at least for a period of time before shifting back. And these rhythms, they're definitely genetically programmed within us, but they're also somewhat malleable, influenced by our behavior and our environment. And kind of because of that, we can easily lose the beat. And so, as you read, for part of my reporting for the book, I put myself through a few experiments, one of which was going 50 feet below ground into a bunker in Arkansas. So there I cut myself off from all the earthly cues, any other humans, any clocks, put all the light at a dim red, which I learned did not affect our circadian rhythms in the same way that other wavelengths of light do. And then I just tracked everything. I tracked my meals, I tracked my moods, I tracked my heart rate, my temperature, my glucose, you name it. I was wearing a device tracking it. I typed on a typewriter.
I was wondering if you ever went full on in the dark down there. Did you ever the lights in total dark?
No total dark. I tried to be safe, right? So the guy that I rented the bunker from had set this place up, as you read about, really elaborately, with these special lights, thankfully, that you could adjust in color and in dimness. So I just kept it really dim, but like bright enough that I could function safely. Because there was also, you can see in the back there, there's, spiral staircases, and it wouldn't have been. Yeah.
You would have to sit still if you've made it totally dark.
Yeah. No, I used my 10 days. I taught myself to play the harmonica, not well. And then, I also tried to learn to juggle. So I kept myself entertained while I was recording all these various rhythms in my body. And as you might have read about, indeed, those rhythms you were basically lost. I fell out of coordination with the sun, and those rhythms within myself also fell out of sync. I worked with scientists after my experiment to analyze all that data I collected. And here's just one example of some of the visuals that we made of that data. This is the buttons that I wore. I taped a bunch of buttons on my body to measure temperature. So it's kind of a, your core body temperature drops at night. Your skin temperature is sort of the opposite because it's your heat's leaving your body, but it still essentially tracks what's changing. And so here's a sampling of those buttons. And you can see how at the beginning, I had fairly distinct rhythm. And then as time went on, my rhythm dampened and it just really, it lost, it lost.
It looks kind of fuzzy. Yeah.
It gets fuzzier, exactly, as the time went on. And then if you remember reading, at one point I completely flipped. I was living my days while people above ground were asleep.
That's your pain.
That is my, I was having, breakfast for dinner, but it turned out to be breakfast time, which I did not know until I looked at my data when I got out. But we don't need to go into a bunker, unfortunately, to mess up our clocks. Even above ground, our modern lifestyle puts us indoors, about 90% of the time, according to research surveys. And the light we have indoors just does not compare to what we get outside. So I used one of the spectrometers that I was borrowing from scientists, just to give like a quick example here. This is indoor light in my apartment, and I actually have a pretty good daylight, as you can see. I have a pretty big window here. And it was just 89 lux standing in the middle of my apartment. That translates to this new measurement of melanoptic EDI, which kind of takes into account the blue wavelengths. That only came out to 54. Stepped outside onto my little balcony, and there you go. Just skyrocketed up. So despite it feeling bright inside, our eyes can be deceiving. I talk a bit about why the visual system differs from the circadian system as far as its interpretation of the light it's taking in. And this is just an example. You really kind of have to see the data to believe it, because your eyes are not going to give you the full story. So again, indoor lighting, because of our artificial lighting, tends to be weaker, tends to be the wrong day wavelengths. And that creates for our physiology this diminished day-night distinction that it really relies on to tell the time of day and to know what to do when. But that's not the only wrench in our clockworks. As I discovered researching the book, it is everything from our indoor environments, which this goes way back. I went to London, walked the streets, and saw some relics of when the old window taxes pushed people to actually brick up windows and even deplete their light environment further.
I love it. I really loved the different pieces of history and how, the unintended consequences of financial decisions that are made sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I find that fascinating too. And yeah, the original alarm clock, human alarm clock, I found that anyway pretty fascinating.
Yes, that's funny.
But yeah, so, and the way, even how we draw time zones, that can have ramifications for our rhythms, as I talk about in the book. And here's me, I'm straddling the meridian line there in Greenwich. And, then there's jet lag. So when we travel across, travel internationally, I shared this story in the book, but this was me the morning after I got back from my trip to Europe. I got in the first car accident of my life. And, studies show that you're actually at a high risk, that international travelers are at a high risk of such things, unfortunately. And then, just another shot of another example of how we've messed up our rhythms, and that's basically by moving north and south. We evolved at the equator, where we had 12 hours of light and 12 hours of dark. And this is me under the midnight sun in Denali, where I went for another little experiment for the book. And so it never quite got dark there. But yeah, there's a whole host of things that we've done within society to really make it tough on our clocks. And as you've read, there's lots of consequences to that for our physiology, both our physical health and our mental health. But there's also good news. As we understand the science, it's pointing us to strategies that we can use both as individuals and as a society to try to remedy that problem and reinfuse some of those lost cues. So the three things that I kind of break down are increasing contrast in our lives, right? Increasing the brightness of our days and the darkness of our nights. And that's getting outside as much as we can. Also for the book, I went camping. This is a campsite that my dad and I had in Oregon. And then when we're indoors, trying to be by windows as much as we possibly can. That is the window that I'm very fortunate to have. And then when we can't get enough daylight, the science is leading us to getting better and better indoor lighting, that we at least the science is there, the technology is there to have it. It's just not widely used yet, but there are tunable lights available now that you can increase the brightness and you can really get that bright blue, rich light that our inner clocks need to tell that it's daytime. So this is a school in England that I spoke with a teacher and the students at. That first picture was the original lighting, and this is with the new bright blue rich light. And so the students were talking about how much better they felt, how much better they were doing in class with that light that was really trying to mimic daylight. And at the opposite end of the day, it's really about taking out that blue light from our environments, dimming it, and really kind of thinking back, how were our ancestors living at night? And that was primarily in darkness with maybe a campfire, maybe candles as we evolved. And then the second piece, though beyond contrast, is constricting our eating window. So that is really showing to be a significant contributor here. If we can think about restricting the time during the day at which we eat, studies show that that can do a lot for our circadian rhythms and our overall health, in particular, our metabolic health. So scientists I talked to suggested really aiming for that 10-hour window, and that could reap benefits for us, and especially shifting that earlier in the day. And then finally, being consistent. So that's eating, sleeping, exercising at the same time every day of the week, which can be difficult in modern society, of course, especially if you're a teenage student going to school at 6:30 a.m. or something. It's really hard to not to want to sleep in on the weekend and catch up. So to the extent that you can, that's the other piece of advice I give. And then as a society, I also talk about what kind of moves can we make to help everyone here, help everybody's inner clocks. And that's everything from, again, thinking about maybe delaying those start times for teenagers at school. And then for adults, thinking about maybe flexing work schedules to adapt to the various chronotypes, the early birds and night owls among us. And thinking about time zones, clock changes, shift work schedules, thinking about our environment at night, if we can cut back on the light pollution, how we design our buildings, and then thinking about that also in context of social equity. I learned a lot during the reporting for this book about how this is another issue of equity, that there are certain segments of the population that really find themselves in daylight deserts during the day where they're not getting access to daylight because maybe they're working in a basement or a back of house space. They don't have the corner office, right? And they're probably living in a home that may not have ready access and a lot of windows. And then at night, they may be more prone to light pollution. Maybe they're in a social housing complex with a bright, LED that's beaming out to try to protect.
Or just anybody who lives in New York City. I lived in New York City for 4 years, and New York City is just, you know, a light problem all the way around for pretty much everyone there. Buildings with shadows,
Oh yeah, day and
lights,
night.
car lights, yeah, everything. But yeah.
Yeah, I lived on the Upper West Side, exactly the same, right? And the street lights that are just beaming in to your bedroom window, unwelcoming. So yeah, so you know that we have tools as individuals, we have tools as a society to think about rescuing our lost rhythms. And then, you know, a step further, at the end of the book, I talk about other ways in which we can really take advantage of this science to, you know, go further and improve our productivity at work. There's ways in which we can use the science to enhance sports performance. And again, social equity, thinking about the timing of medications and surgeries to optimize medicine. And this is a vertical farm I went to outside of London as well, where they are taking in, leveraging the idea of different wavelengths of light at different times of day to enhance the growth of plants and crops in particular. So there's things that agricultural scientists are trying to do to take advantage of this science. And then also thinking about, you know, survival beyond Earth, which personally I'd rather not think about. I care more about trying to protect this planet, but thinking about how in the world we would survive on another planet where the wavelengths of light are different, where the day lengths are different, and all the implications there. So yeah, I was just gonna run through that quick. I'll stop there, and yeah, I'm very happy to answer questions. Get this thing off. There we go.
So I'll open up the queue here in a second, but I have, so a couple of things. I've been interested in light, I'll say, for a long time. And in particular, the work of John Ott, which you didn't cover in the book. I don't know if you've ever come across him, but he's the father of photobiology, and an early pioneer who showed these problems with light. He was actually a time-lapse photographer for Walt Disney, and he showed that by accident, he discovered that the light spectrum on the plant could make female or male flowers, and then he wasn't able to get a pumpkin. And he went on from that to do a lot of research, discovering that light could change the sex of animals, and ultimately was the father of photobiology, taking pictures of cells with fluorescent lighting. And he did work with schools, I think a school in Florida with natural light. And which is, so that was interesting to me. I also had this weird little book called American Sunshine, that was from the University of Chicago Press, talking about diseases of darkness and, you know, basically going inside and all of this. And I went to a junior high in the 1970s that was modern, built with absolutely no windows at all. So I found that kind of interesting. Yeah. I mean, I was only in there for 2 years, but I wonder like how much it messed everyone up. And then you know, in the book you were talking about the neonates and babies and pregnancy and how the clock gets set in the mother. And I actually, my middle child has, you know, she has the worst vision of all my kids. She also like wanted lights on all the time, but I was traveling back and forth every week from Colorado to Washington, D.C. for the entire 9 months of my pregnancy. And I'm wondering like, wow, I wonder what that did to the poor child's clock. And she was actually born with like where they had to use the light on her because she had the bilirubin or whatever. And I was like, I bet she was blue light toxic or circadian clock messed up, or so. That's not really a question. I guess it's more an observation. But, you know, I mean, I found it interesting toward the end as you were talking about the ways that, like the glasses and the ways different people are hacking. And of course I talk to and deal with a lot of biohackers, but I find that when we attempt to hack with the science, with the lack of understanding about how beautifully interconnected everything in the body is, and the microbiome for me is kind of a real central player there. And the Weizmann Institute's done some great work on the circadian clock of the microbiome that I think we're fools to think that we can hack a system and improve on nature without causing other problems. And so, I found that interesting, and in particular, the stuff that DARPA is doing, which,
oh gosh,
they do a lot of things that they, isn't this cool? It's great. It's coming, but it's not. So I'm just wondering what you think about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's so complicated as you're alluding to. I think it's really, it's like the cool factor is big there, especially with what DARPA is doing. So I'll just refresh everybody's memory there, but they're looking at creating a digestible pill kind of system that essentially can release hormones and such on demand. And part of that would, part of the impetus there is to like kind of automatically reset the circadian system or shift it. So with the idea that you might have military personnel that are, shipped overseas, whether for a disaster or a conflict, and you don't want them dealing with jet lag, right? You want them to land on the ground and ready to go. And so if they could just like press the remote control and like, all right, now they're ready to go. Their circadian rhythms are in sync with the local time. That would be beneficial, obviously. But when you think about
possibly go wrong,
yeah, I mean, I think there's
how many tests have we run on our soldiers of, cool things to make them ready when they hit the ground that, actually make them much worse down the road. So anyway,
there's a lot more research to be done. And I know there's a lot of very smart researchers working on that right now. And hopefully they're, looking into this, as many of the connections and possible repercussions there are. But yeah, the microbiome piece that you mentioned, I think it's so fascinating. We're really just starting to understand, the implications of the microbiome rhythm, its interaction with our, the human cells rhythm, how those play together, how they talk to the rest of the body, and what all that, might mean for our understanding of that whole system and what.
That's
go haywire.
In the kind of plant world too. I don't have an answer to this, and you didn't cover it in the book, but plants have what are called cryptochromes, and those are some of the genes that they've tinkered with in the GMO plants. And I have this, in my head, kind of, okay, well, you're tinkering with the clock genes of the plant, and we're eating those clock genes. And I talk to people all the time about the importance of eating local food, because it's telling you where you are and what the conditions that you're living under from the light that's in the plant. So if you're genetically engineering a plant and you're changing those cryptochromes, like what kind of signal is that giving to your microbiome in your body? And how could it maybe be actually affecting the clock genes in our own body, which are basically homologs of that gene? So that's another one of my weird.
I'm not aware of how the genes of a plant would directly impact our genes, but I mean, I know, where you're going with the like eating locally. I think we are finding a lot more about, why that's important. That that the seasonality of our fruits and vegetables and the locality is telling our body, something. So.
Okay, well, I'll let Karen ask you a question and I'll quit asking.
Okay.
But I might ask some more super nerdy questions.
Please do.
Thank you, Martha. I have so many questions, which I won't make you suffer through, or the group suffer through, but so many questions, because I guess to me, a couple of things. When I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I never had problems sleeping. the quality, like my ability to sleep well has definitely declined as I've gotten older.
Mhm.
So I don't, and I kind of understand why that is, maybe, but I'll just throw that out there. The other thing that I remember reading about in my history books is that people, particularly in the 19th century, but I think maybe even going back to the 18th century, would do like this dual sleep thing where they would sleep like in the early evening and then they'd be up for several hours and then they'd go back to sleep after that. And I mean, I remember reading somewhere that was actually kind of a cool thing to do. And a lot of college students do that. I remember somebody in college who did that all the time. I thought it was fascinating. I couldn't do it, but she did it. And she was very popular. So I don't know what to make of that. So so what do you think about like these different things that people try? And I guess the other thing I'll throw out there too is that I know that light is problematic when people are trying to sleep, but I know for me sometimes, like last night, I get some of the best sleep with the lights on full blast in my room. The TV's on, the lights are on, and I'm out. And then I have to wake myself up, and going back to sleep, it actually is harder for me to get back to sleep. So can you just make sense of that and help me sleep again? Thank you.
Sure, I'll do my best.
Make Karen sleep again.
Well, I mean, point number one is that we are all different. We all we rise and wake more naturally at different times of day. How we sleep is, optimally is going to be different. How our eyes take in light and the impact of that light on our physiology is going to be a little different. But on average, the science really is, I mean, I did hear a lot about the two sleeps that you're referring to in history. And the scientists have done a lot of studies, and they're still finding that physiologically, it is beneficial for us to consolidate our sleep to for an adult, ideally between 8 and 9 hours. That's not to say that the culture, your environment, your circumstances might make a different, allocation of those hours of sleep be more ideal. And a lot of them were arguing to me that, back then there were reasons to be up in the middle of the night, for safety reasons, to check on things, or, maybe beds weren't all that comfortable. You had to loosen yourself up, or maybe that was the time of day when I know a lot of even social events would happen, or, couples would procreate. So there are kind of reasons for that setup. But that, again, I mean, for some people today, maybe that does work ideally for them too. And similarly with thinking about napping during the day, we can think of that as another, reallocation of sleep. On average, the science suggests that really taking a short nap during the day, like less than 20 minutes, is most ideal, because you're not going to really mess with your sleep at night as much with that. But, there's wiggle room on all these things for each of us individually. And then I know, early on, you were mentioning something about your sleep, deteriorating as you got older. And well, I find the same. That's definitely the case for me. I can speak particularly for women. A lot of my other reporting lately has been on women's health. And there is a lot of research showing that as our hormones change, as we go through midlife, we go through menopause, our estrogen levels drop, and that has a significant impact on our ability to fall and stay asleep and the quality of our sleep. So that's, that's one factor there. Obviously men's hormones are changing as well. Men and women are different, but we're both experiencing different effects on our sleep as we age. And so that's something to take into account. I can't remember what was your other question, or is that?
Well, you did answer it, why sleep does decline over time. I know, I mean, I'm going to be 70 next year, and so I find myself supplementing with glycine and progesterone, in particular, to add before I go to bed, I'll take progesterone and glycine. And it does help, but it's nowhere near a silver bullet. And sometimes I have good sleep and sometimes it's crappy sleep. And I mean, I'm on a PEMF mat and I'm doing all the things that cost a lot of money. So it's still, but the results are still like, they're improved, but they're still not great.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the other thing the science shows. I mean, as we age, part of that aging process and part of the driver of chronic disease as well as poor sleep is these dampened circadian rhythms. And that is where, I know you said you say you think you sleep well with the lights on. And I mean, that really might be true for you. The science does suggest that even if we think we are sleeping well, sometimes the light environment can affect the quality of that sleep. There was research out of Northwestern University within the last year or two that did find that even when people like subjectively thought they slept well, they checked the data, their heart rate rhythms were higher and these other physiological measures were not as good when the lights were on. So it might, I don't know, just a thought. It might be worth thinking
the other
about.
thing in the book, there's one of the studies they did or something where the guy had the pulsed light that he did that while people were sleeping. So like that to me says, okay, you're sleeping, but light is still going through your skin and into your body, and it's sending a signal. And so, and the signal is, it's not nighttime if all your lights are on.
Yeah, exactly. And your system is also just more sensitive to light at night because it's expecting darkness. So there's something to that too, that it doesn't take that much light to make the body really confused. Like, is it actually daytime? All right, we need to shift our inner clocks to try to match up.
And I think that's true, which is why I make it a point to sleep with the mat. I mean, if I'm falling asleep and the lights are on, it's unintentional, but it just feels so yummy. But then I get up to go to bed and, and then the mask goes on that completely blocks out light, and the television might be on, but I can't see the television. And it's far away. I can only hear the television because that helps me sleep. And, and I'm even sleeping on a PEMF mat, which has red light under it, and that can stay on too and sleep on top of that. So but I don't know how much that's helping. I hope it does.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's kind of like me. I was experimenting with all the things too and tracking everything to see
what works. Yeah. I've got a couple more questions from people, but I want to ask a male-female question, having been a mother. And, we get a lot of disrupted sleep when we have children. It's often the mother who's getting up in the middle of the night. I mean, more so there's some sharing of that. And when I had my child, I mentioned that where I was traveling back and forth, I had to go back to work about 3 weeks after she was born, and I was traveling. And my husband was at home with this newborn and waking up, throughout the night. And when I would come back on Thursday night, he just looked like a walking dead man. And he's like, I have never felt exhaustion like this ever in my life. And most mothers I know, like, they're still the energizer, but I mean, sometimes they're tired, but I'm just wondering if there's, I don't remember you mentioning if there's research on a female ability to deal with disrupted sleep better than men.
Oh, that's a really good point. I don't know if I can, don't quote me on any of this, but I think there is periods of a woman's life where we might be more malleable, like again, that flexibility in our rhythms. I mean, maybe, now I'm speaking hypothetically, like maybe during that period of time, childbearing years, that is more malleable to adapt a little more than but I'm not totally sure on that, but yeah,
makes me want to go look.
yeah, something to look into. But yeah, you've got a young child. It's so interesting. I mean, I think I touched on that in a few parts of the book, but even just the idea of the signals you're giving, to the baby through breast milk, their rhythms, and thinking about, those women that pump their breast milk and then feed it to their babies later, thinking about well, when did you pump that milk and when are you feeding it to your baby? If you pump that milk in the morning and you're feeding it to your baby right before you want it to go to sleep, you're giving it cortisol.
Yeah,
And
that
that's
was really eye-opening. I hadn't, well, now that you raise that point, then think about like the milk in the grocery store. Like when was the, when was the cow, like, anyway, I'll move on to someone else. So, Mary Ramos has a question. So Mary, you want to unmute yourself?
Hi. Yeah, so my takeaway from the book was go outside and get more sun. So I've been doing that and not wearing sunglasses because I've been able to tolerate the sun a lot better since I started my new diet. I have less sun sensitivity. Even right now I'm sitting in, I don't know if you can see the sun shining.
Yeah, I can see, the sun on your face. Yeah.
Except I live in Texas and I have this huge window here. So I put sunscreens on the windows and it blocks 80% of the UV lights.
Okay.
So my question is, so how have you managed to increase your light in the house with the artificial lights? Because I've been looking at incandescent light bulbs are just like almost nowhere to be found.
Yeah, and they were way better for the nighttime for us, for sure. So, in my apartment, I mean, a lot of my manipulation has just been to try to make sure that I've got window in front of my eyes as close as possible for as much of the day as possible. Beyond that, I have the Hue light bulbs that you can adjust in intensity and color. They're one of many companies now. Philips is one of many companies producing lights like that. And then I have a couple Skyview lamps that are, doing the same thing, really trying to pump out that blue rich light. So they're a higher end, new technology that I was playing with for the book.
Have you heard? I bought one bulb and I was looking at others of the LEDs that are full spectrum, supposedly.
Yeah, exactly. So the Hue, I mean, you don't even have to go as fancy as like the true color changing Hue bulb. Just getting those full spectrum, bright LEDs for the daytime, but
right.
Being careful if you do that to make sure you're not leaving those on at night, because at night is when you want, the warmer, dimmer.
I turn on my overhead light and I have a lamp that I put on now.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly.
I have a lizard lamp.
I was amazed when you talk in the book about the windows in the building and they would block off windows, and I'm going, how crazy is that? And charging taxes for a window.
Oh, I know. Yeah, that history was mind blowing. Yeah, I mean, you had like everybody, like Charles Dickens, complaining about it, right? Back in the day. It's a big deal, and we kind of forgot about that. And then we're back to certain periods of time where the architecture trend is to really have less window, and junior highs without windows apparently. So
it's still an operating school, which is crazy to me. But yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And the other thing I was wondering about is, how do we get the cities to turn off light or to change the lights outside that are always on, affecting our wildlife? And like when I go for a walk at night, I live in a community where we have old fashioned looking lamps, so they're not quite as bright as everybody else is out there in the city of Waco. But
oh, that's good. Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. I know here in Seattle, they were one of the first to, swap in the LEDs for energy efficiency. And those first generation LEDs are really not good for nighttime. They're so bright. They're so blue. So you've got the glare, just like the LED headlights that are a pet peeve of mine, because I feel like I'm going to crash every time they're like right
now. I think they should be illegal. I think they're dangerous. Yeah.
So there are nonprofits out there. I think Soft Lights is like one, and then the International Dark Sky Association. They're doing a lot of good work looking at trying to raise awareness about light at night. And
they just put in a new walk pathway, and it's going to be lit, I think, at least until 10 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
Big bright city lights, city street lights.
Yeah, I mean, I guess all we can do is talk to our our leaders and the people making those decisions. And hopefully as the science people become more aware of the science can connect the dots and make the changes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Jen had a question, but now I don't see Jen. But
I'm here.
somebody
I,
else-
I
okay.
lowered my hand.
Okay.
I know we're sort of getting to the end here, but just wanted to say thank you. This is such an important topic, and I think all of us here love talking about light and red light and circadian rhythm. Chronobiology has always been really interesting to me. And I'm a nutrition coach, and a lot of my clients don't sleep well. I don't sleep well either. And so it's like I'm striving to understand this just about every day. And I know, like, yeah, several people on this call, we've had conversations about light and sleep hygiene issues, but I do think the microbiome plays a big role here. And the more we can correct that, I think the closer we get to what we actually need. But I want to ask you is,
Nope, we
So,
lost you.
Alicia? Oh, there you are.
We lost you for a second there, Jen.
oh, okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Yep.
that's
Okay. Sorry, where was I? So like the
Microbiome.
measurement of someone's unique chronobiological type. I had an aura ring that sort of gave me permission to embrace that I'm a morning person. But, sort of from a family standpoint and culturally, no one else is a morning person. Everyone stays up late, and I wake up at the same morning time, and we have like pretty much blackout conditions in our room, but I wake up at the same time. I need to go to bed early. Like that's how I know that I feel best, and my aura ring data can validate that. But
Yeah.
what are some other ways that people who don't want to wear an aura ring to really know, like, where do they fall in their
Yeah.
type?
Well, that's a great question because I did similar. I was tracking with Fitbit data for a long time to see my trends, and I mean the advice I give and I give in the book is, if at all possible, try to take a good chunk of time off when you don't need to use an alarm clock, and then just try to let your body direct your behavior. When do you feel tired? When you do, go to bed, and then let yourself wake up naturally. And then it's gonna it takes a while, right, for the body to like adapt from we're used to a lot of us having to rise with an alarm clock, right? But trying to cut that out for a few days, see what your body does, and then from there see what kind of wiggle room is in your daily schedule to try to shift things to accommodate what your body wants to do just a little bit more. Beyond that, the devices definitely help, but I think even with devices, I think just giving yourself permission to be on vacation and do that if that is even possible. That's the way to go.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I think in the microbiome stuff, it is really interesting, and I think that's where a lot of that second C, the constricting, thinking about time restricted eating. I think the data are still coming, but I bet a lot of that impact might be through the microbiome rhythms as well.
I think that's probably also in this section where you were talking about medication at different times. That's probably also very tightly linked to the microbiome. And I actually think that, of course, early on in my company, we were focused primarily on microbiome research and supporting researchers. And, it was kind of this crazy time, and everybody was coming in, and pharma was coming in. And then I think pharma went, oh my God, we don't want to touch this because basically it's going to change everything from how our drugs work. It's going to make the whole trial process more difficult. We're going to have to look and see, is our drug safe for the microbiome? And they ran like as fast as they could get away from it. And it's just been kind of interesting to watch that, because it is a complex ecosystem and it affects everything. And, that's one of the things that I talk about a lot, but,
that's interesting.
we just barely scratched the surface of understanding the implications of the microbiome and all these things. And, things like the light on the microbiome.
Absolutely. Yeah, similar with like the time of day for like a drug treatment, trying to incorporate that into a clinical trial and study the added variable of time really complicates matters. And I think that's what's been, as the scientists told me that I quote in the book, that's really held us back from implementing a lot of this science into clinical care so far. But and similar with microbiome variable as well. Yeah. A lot of moving parts.
Eva's got a question. Eva, or
may I interrupt just a second? I finally get to meet Lynne.
Hi, nice to meet you.
And I've never heard you talk before. I think I did hear one interview way back when I read the book back in September. But anyway, good to meet you.
Really good to see you. Yeah, thank you.
Your aunt and uncle are good friends of ours.
That's right. Yes. Hey, Peeples.
thank you for making that connection.
Thank you. Thank you.
One thing that when we moved down to the Caribbean in 2004, and we were living on a sailboat, and I gradually, well, not very long, I noticed that, it got dark. It was in Panama. It got dark at about 5:30 or 6. And then, we would wake up at 5:30 or 6, and we just kept that rhythm. And I thought, wow, this is the way it's supposed to be.
Right?
Yeah, it's really neat. Anyway,
way less confused. If only we could all live right at that line, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Eva, are you still there? I can't see you, but if you still have your question, Eva. Yeah. You have to unmute yourself. I can't unmute for you, I don't think. Eva, the mute button is on the bottom row at the left. There you go.
There we go.
Okay, you're unmuted. Do you have a question? Okay, I'm moving on to Mahaleen. If you come, you can come back, Eva, but Mahaleen, what's your question?
Yeah, so thank you for being here this evening. And just like Jan, I also use an aura ring. If I get 7 hours of sleep, that's optimal for me. But what I do during the day is a lot of meditation. And my aura ring thinks it's a nap. I love that.
Yeah, that's a good sign.
My question gives me the brain waves, and it's just awesome. My question is, since the aura ring thinks it's an app and adds it to my sleep score, what's the science of it? Is it actually, does meditation make up for poor sleep or for better sleep or the disposition one would receive from sleeping? Does the question make sense?
The question makes sense. Unfortunately, I don't think I have an answer. I didn't get into the study of meditation in my book research. You've definitely sparked some interest. I might have to, but from just what I've gleaned and my other scientific reporting and such, I think there's a lot of strong research that meditation, obviously it changes the brain waves it's the Aura Ring is picking up on those changes, and that it is doing something to help. I mean, what's the word I'm looking for? To help kind of the rebuilding, the healing of, that the brain's doing at night, right? The kind of the repair period of time. So I think there's similar mechanisms at play with sleep and meditation. But yeah, I can't tell you exactly what the differences are and how exactly it's working. But I will say, actually, I remember I was wearing a Fitbit while I was getting a massage once and just relaxed, but definitely didn't fall asleep, and it thought I was asleep. So
Exactly.
it's a good sign, right? It's absolutely a good sign. I felt great afterwards. It's like, yeah, the most refreshing nap ever. So yeah, I'm glad that you found something that's working well for you. And yeah, I'm sorry I can't give you a good scientific answer on that one, but it might be out there.
Yeah, I mean, if it's all about brain waves, because when we go to sleep, we do move from alpha, my understanding, to theta, to delta. So if meditation does the same, why not use that? It's free, doesn't even cost as much as progesterone or whatever the supplement I need to get, So anyway, thank you for the feedback.
Yeah.
Beautiful work.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing.
Of course.
Okay, Chris, and I think Eva was back and now she's gone again, but Chris, why don't you go ahead and ask your question? I think she's
Okay.
having some technical issues.
Okay. All right. First of all, what a project you've accomplished. Just fascinating reading, and such a privilege to be in a book club where we get to meet with the author after we finish the book. Really, it's a really special experience. So I have a comment, and I think maybe you may know something about this. I do a lot of nature observing. I was a teacher for many, many years, and even just not as a teacher, but just observing nature and realizing how really specific timing is a part of all of these cycles and processes. We're tuned into them in terms of the seasons, but they're really much more specific than that. Like I raised monarch butterflies and some other species as well. But the monarchs that I did with my classroom every year, they would tend to go into their chrysalis early morning. And if it was 10 to 12 days later, would come out sometimes at exactly the same time that they would emerge from their chrysalis. And it was always in the morning. I mean, like 9-10. We kept track of when they pupated and then when they emerged. And I mean, that was just so fascinating. Again, with the monarchs, of course, we're also working with our magnetic connection to the earth all the time. But when we would release the butterflies, they were coming from a dark space, actually like a grocery bag. As soon as we would let them out, the sun would warm their muscles in their wings, and they could fly, and they would fly straight up no matter where we were, and they would head south, which is where they would be going from Michigan to get to their migratory grounds in Mexico. So, I mean, it just, and it was just the timing. But what I've noticed with myself as a living organism is if I go to sleep, if I go to bed one night, I have a pattern I stick with. I really have never used an alarm clock. I can use my phone if I need to make a 4:30 a.m. flight or something, but I've never really needed an alarm clock. And I just notice how this idea of being malleable, we have these patterns, but they are malleable. And I notice if one night, usually, you know, I go to bed around 10 o'clock, let's say I stay up to 11:30 for some reason. Well, that next night, my body wants to reset for 11:30.
Yeah.
And I have just noticed this and what it makes me aware of is the importance of sticking with a pattern that is good for me and not but it shows how easy it is to get out and away from a healthful pattern.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
I'm just kind of interested in that whole malleability issue.
Yeah, that Netflix effect is what you were experiencing. Even if you weren't watching Netflix, that's what the scientists used to describe that idea. If you stay up late, in particular, if you're like up with lights on, then that does shift the clock later. And then the next day, you're going to be more apt to stay up later. And then maybe you got more light, and it can snowball, because then you're missing the morning light as well, which is what's kind of reining you back in, shifting your clock earlier. So you can get in this pattern where, yeah, your biology might predispose you to being a bit of a night owl, but you can become kind of an extreme night owl pretty easily. So
yes,
consistency is key. You got it. Yeah,
it is. Yeah. Well, fascinating. Thank you.
I know we're up on your time and you have to go, but that last point also pointed to something I thought was pretty significant, your comments about melatonin, because I think, you know, a lot of people take melatonin thinking it's going to help them sleep and take it right before bed. And the discussion of what you said about melatonin in the book, I thought was really interesting. And if you need to go,
no, I'm happy to. I can reiterate that point before I go, because it was news to me that if you do want to take melatonin, need to take it, you know, ideally it's not something, from what I gather from the scientists, that we should be doing all the time. But if you need it, especially to kind of break that cycle, that snowball effect, you want to take it 2 or 3 hours before your bedtime. So rather than right before bed, because if you take it right before bed, that could actually end up kind of like coming back to bite you. That could shift you later, because our melatonin is naturally rising, a few hours before bed, because it's starting to ramp up. So you want to take it at that same point that it is starting to naturally ramp up. And you also don't want to take all that much. I think it's less than 1 milligram. The scientist told me is enough to do the trick. So it's less than most people take and earlier than most people take it as well.
Yeah, and there's some biohackers. I can't remember the guy's name, but he sells a supplement called the Sandman or something, and it's a melatonin suppository that's like a huge amount of melatonin. And I'm like, I can't remember where I read it, but somebody else had written that it messes with like your quantums, where you are in the quantum field or something. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know if that's true, but it seems like it sort of blows up your microtubules or something and kind of puts you out of time and space.
Martha, I just have to jump in here to say I would take melatonin to help my sleep, and I stopped because I remember taking some melatonin and having like the worst, scariest sleep of my life. And when I woke up, I was like, what the hell? It was like, I don't know what was going on, but I did not want to take that trip again. So I have not taken melatonin since.
Yeah, that has the same effect on my son, Charlie. He cannot take melatonin at all. It sends him into like the outer orbit.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, not that I should encourage any use, but like maybe a smaller dose wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Or taking it at the right time.
Yeah, because I think you were saying like even just like 1 milligram is sufficient to kind of send the signal.
Exactly.
Well, that's great. Well, we so appreciate you coming tonight and talking to us about the book, giving us some highlights and sharing.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks.
I think it was probably a very fun book to write.
Thank you.
It was. I had some fun, as you could tell. Some crazy adventures. Well, thank you so much again. It was good to see you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So, okay, we can stay for a bit more if you guys want to discuss the book or talk about light in our chronological clocks. I mean, I found it interesting, but I was really surprised that John Ott's work wasn't in the book, because he's really one of the earliest pioneers of, Danielle, you've got a question? Danielle Lawrence, you have to unmute yourself.
Hi, sorry about that.
No worry.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Unfortunately, I just joined your group, and so I got the email about this just earlier today. So I haven't read the book, but I was curious. Did she address the issue of flicker at all in the book?
She didn't address the issue of flicker. I mean, it was interesting. The book has a lot of history. It has a lot of science research around circadian biology, but I guess I follow some people who are really focused on the blue light problem, screen flicker, and the book did not present blue light in the vein that I know it from the researchers I'm looking at and listening to. And so I did find that interesting that, that it wasn't discussed. And
okay. Yeah. I look forward to reading the book. It sounds very, very intriguing. I've really, really interested in blue light and circadian rhythm, and go to the beach and watch the sunrise, to get entrained with the day and night cycles in my location. So yeah, thank you so much for hosting this. This has been fabulous.
You're welcome. I did answer the question about the DARPA technology, because there's so much of the hacking technology comes out of military hacking, and think
about Becker, Robert O. Becker, and the body electric. I mean, he was originally sponsored by DARPA, and when he came out and did that 60-minute segment talking about different towers and cellular communications that were going to go up, and this was back 40 some years ago, overnight all of his funding completely shut down, lost his lab, everything gone.
Yeah. I thought about asking her about him too, and I didn't ask her about Jack Cruz. She probably doesn't know who Jack Cruz is.
Oh, right. And of course, Jack, Mr. Circadian Rhythm.
But
light.
I will say, since moving here I always slept pretty well, but we had too much light on in the house. And since moving here to the farm, I'm in natural light. Well, I am inside a lot, but I do have lots of windows, and I go in and out all day long. And I'm out in the morning sun first thing every morning. And I don't use an alarm clock, and it's pitch black out here. There's also no electromagnetic fields and stuff around me. I turn off my Wi-Fi, and I feel like my sleep is much better here than it was in Colorado. A few weeks ago, I actually showed people an app called The Architecture of Radio. I'll just pop it up here again, where you can actually hold it up, and it will show you the electromagnetic fields that are around you. And I'm holding it up here, and there's I can see Russian satellites off in a distance, but here in my area there's very few wave patterns. But when I lived in Colorado in Lone Tree, I was just bathed in electromagnetics, which it has very similar, lots of issues with the body, sort of these invisible things. Light's visible, but a lot of light's invisible.
One more question. Did she reference the invisible rainbow at all?
No, she didn't talk about the invisible rainbow in the book. And that,
Got
I mean,
it.
that really is more electromagnetics than
Yeah.
it is light. There was a lot of discussion in the book about different lighting and lighting, lighting technologies and light bulbs and different types of lighting research. And, again, the science gets funded by, the guys developing the light bulbs a lot of times. So we also have to be a little bit kind of mindful of that, because here we are now with these LED lights that are, pretty detrimental to our health.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I will get off the call so somebody else can say something.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Debbie Burnish, looks like you have a question.
Oh, hi there. So I was just going to tell you, you said that comment about when you were traveling on business and then John was like flat out exhausted. And so I'm one of 13 kids. And so my mom, when I had my son, I was 33. And I remember calling her and saying, I'm exhausted. I was breastfeeding. It wasn't going well because I was dehydrated, but I didn't know it because I wasn't pumping. And I couldn't understand why Alex couldn't sleep more than 2 hours. And I remember telling her, I don't think I can do this. And she's like, oh, you'll be surprised how little sleep you can get by on. So she had, I think she had her last baby when she was 44. So I think, there's something about you go through pregnancy and then that equips you, to have more energy or something,
Yes.
and to recover from getting up and down. Because now my daughter is 28 and she is woken up all the time at night, and then she's got to work all day, and she's and she's doing it. I couldn't do it, but she can. So.
Yeah, I do think back on those times, like how little sleep I lived off of when my kids were young. And my oldest, I was a single parent from the time he was 1.5. So, and working a full-time job, but we seem to manage. But I'll bet you there are definitely some differences between men and women and the ability to deal with disrupted sleep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Too.
Chris, it looks like you have another question.
Yeah, just real quick, what can you tell us about the screen flicker? Didn't know that term.
Danielle sounds like she might be a better expert than I am, but there's a flicker rate in these screens. And if you think about, pulsing, anything that's pulsing is sending a signal. There's also, when you start to do research on the red light devices, the infrared and
Near
infrared, those have flicker rates too. And a lot of times they don't publicize it, but you don't want a high flicker rate. So
Martha, so going back in time, at the development of electricity, you had Edison and Tesla. And Tesla had developed direct current, whereas Edison developed AC. Edison won out, but the thing is that alternating current flickers or essentially goes on, off at 60 cycles per second. And so this is so fast that the human eye can't capture that. But your body, you don't visually see it, but your eye and your skin capture that action and then have to deal with that information coming into your body. So like a lot of times when you see kids melt down in places like Costco or Walmart, it has to do with the flickering of the lights.
Yeah,
And so there,
Thank you.
and
yeah.
I've mentioned before on these calls, my husband could not go into a Costco because of the lights.
I believe it.
Yeah. Mary, you have another question?
Yeah, mine's not about light though. Mine's about one of your products, the, what do you call it? The yield and shield.
Okay.
So I have a huge yard and you had suggested using it and I did spray it. I used one of these jars to spray it. And it's beautiful. I did other things too, but the grass is gorgeous right now. But I'm wondering, can I also put it like in, I was listening to a guy talking about our soil is so depleted of microbes and spores and all kinds of stuff. And he was talking about fermenting peat moss and then spreading the peat moss on your yard, your gardens. I have a problem with mold in my yard and I use peat moss on that to help it.
Yeah. You can put it in with that. You can put it in with that. You can also, worm tea is also a good fermentation media if you want, because actually, I have a whole collection of microbes that we isolated out of worm tea. So that's another.
My worms died this winter. I forgot to feed them, I guess. I mean, I fed them. And then when I went back the next time, there wasn't a single worm in the container. I don't know what happened to them.
They probably would rather be outside in the dirt.
Are you saying worm cheese?
Yeah,
worm tea. So
worm
in a worm casting compost,
Yes.
the liquid that comes through the compost is called worm tea, TEA.
Okay, so you take the worm casings that you can buy and then.
No, you just buy worm tea.
But you can buy worm castings too and make it yourself. But yeah.
Here, I'll show you.
Very expensive though. I don't recommend it. I mean, you can grow worms. I'm going to put I was using those composting worms and they don't like cold weather. So you have to keep them sheltered from the freezing weather. But yeah, so, okay, then I'm going to dump this.
This one is
How much
called,
do you think I need to use of the yield and shield to do like
oh, wow. Okay.
You wouldn't, I mean, for inoculant, you wouldn't have to use a whole lot. You know, you just want to.
Like 2 tablespoons like we do with the yogurt or something?
Yeah, I would probably put 2 tablespoons.
Okay. And then keep it in the sun or in the shade, you think?
I'd probably keep it in the shade.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thank you. Oh, I had another question. I've been using herbal antibiotics. So should I wait to use my sugar shift and all those until after I'm finished with the herbals, or can I use it during the herbal treatments?
You know, people ask that question a lot. I mean, if
I take the herbals twice a day.
What is it? Because some of them actually don't harm the beneficial microbes. They only
it's this Candibactin.
You're probably okay. You can probably go ahead and take it. It's probably okay to go ahead and take it.
Okay. And so then
be beneficial? Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'll ask my question too then. So my friend Susan has cancer and she's on fenbenzidol and now I'm making her sugar shift because she's trying to do a keto diet. So should she take the sugar shift at the same time as the fenbenzidol or separate them?
I would separate them.
That's what I thought. Okay.
I mean, I'd have to look at the mechanism of fenben, but I would separate them.
Okay. Thanks.
Jen, you have a question? And then Rita has a question. You're on mute, Jen.
My question. I know. Just a quick comment to Mary about the worms. I live in Wisconsin and they can definitely live down in the compost all through winter. We have active compost and I used to work, volunteer at an urban farm where they would just put composted material right on inner city asphalt lots and grow things. And the rows of compost would steam like in February when we'd pitchfork it and turn the, add the,
What kind
Well,
of
we
worms
use-
are you using?
what are the
Just
red?
The
There's
red
a
wigglers?
red,
Red
what?
Red wiggler. It's a red wiggler.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to work with a guy named Will Allen, and he like won a MacArthur Genius Grant for his work in urban farming. And I would have to ask him what, I always get my worms from him.
Oh, okay.
But these compost mounds were just actively, I mean, just the steam was so beautiful, and it just surprised me how alive when the rest of our landscape is like winter dead.
Yeah.
They're fine underground in an
Yeah.
active compost pile.
I have,
in the
well, I
winter.
have mine in a composting, worm composting farm bin. And I think what happened to mine is they dried out and they died because of it.
Yeah, they got to have moisture. But honestly,
Yeah.
you could probably water them and they'd come back to life.
And
I'm not kidding. I'm actually not kidding. Like people underappreciate the vitality of nature. Rita, you have a question?
Well, I'm a functional medicine doctor, and I just wanted to say to Mary and the other person who who asked a question about the herbals and if they should continue your product. And as long as you're not taking it together and you're really taking it apart, we even on antibiotics, if it really, was going to save your life, we'll do an antibiotic. We will still give a pre-probiotic. And there's a lot of cellular medicine around that because I work with Dr. William Seeds in the SSRP.
Yeah.
And Martha, I specialize in ALS, and I met you on the phone, and you were at a trip in New York City, and you could tell my accent. I came from New York City, and I bought a whole bunch of things from you, and now I just let my patients buy it, and the products, the pre and probiotics with the glyphosate, they must be on it, because glyphosate shows up everywhere. Anyway, so I was going to say, I would take the product rather than not, but I would never take the product together.
Yeah. And I mean, we do say that about just separating the product from other products because it's kind of a working team. But now I'm going to have to remember someone in the last week was telling me they had a friend with ALS. And now I'm going to have to remember who that is, and maybe I can send them your way because
I exclusively do ALS, and we do it's just amazing things you can do now. You can't even look it up. The studies aren't even on the internet. They're not even published yet.
Well, I have another friend with ALS that well, I mean, we became friends. Somebody introduced him to me years ago, and I was talking to him about the gut, and he started working on all his gut stuff. But there's a doctor in, I think she might be in Miami, Amy.
Oh, Amy, I know her.
Yes.
Amy Hadamio.
Yeah, and he
has
went down there and
a large clinic. She was in my group. It was healing. We were on the board together.
Okay. Well, it's very exciting to me because he's pretty much in remission, and I think it's it's amazing because most people get a diagnosis like that and they're like,
and that's part of the problem, right? If a doctor says, get your affairs in order, somebody speaks that over you.
Right.
And then you focus every time. Like what we try and do is get that mental focus off of, oh, my leg went numb today, and then you draw your mind down to that. And it's just amazing, the mind-body connection too, that goes on even in ALS,
Well, we've been doing I've been working on a Parkinson's documentary and interviewing.
Oh, you are?
with Parkinson's and, just capturing their stories, because I think doctors don't really understand fully what Parkinson's is. But in part of that process of talking to people, the way the message is delivered, for 80% of the people, that's the vision that they see going forward because of the way the doctor has delivered the message. And there's about 20% of the people say, no, that's not me. I'm not going to accept those words, that vision.
Right.
And those are the people who do so much better. And that was really true of my husband, for sure. But there were a couple of times where I've told this story before of, we were at the World Parkinson's Congress, and these two women sat down at the table next to him, and both of them had lost a husband to Parkinson's, and they started talking about how awful it was. And, for the next 3 months, John was practically he was just in a downward spiral. And I was like, okay, we have to do something to wipe out that memory, or you've got to work aggressively to paint a different picture in your mind. And he did. And it's so powerful what we speak, what we don't speak, but we speak in our heads to ourselves.
In our heads, the rumination is, and we do have to know that with these patients, it is very hard. So, I had a chronic illness. So for 15 years, I didn't have a motor neuron disease, but I knew that I was not going out that way. And, it just takes every day to really, like I would do self-hypnosis. Every day there was going to be something devoted to that positivity.
You really just can't underestimate.
You can't underestimate that. Yeah. By the way, there are some people who just, I forget the name of Amy's clinic. There are some people who just can't afford it.
It's
expensive. They don't know. There's a Vegas place. There's places that are popping up.
Well, the same thing for like Alzheimer's, Dr. Bredeson's clinic.
Bredesen, I studied. I didn't get through the whole program because my first profession was a psychotherapist, so I got through like half of it. But then, there's so much you could do when you're studying the biochemistry and pathways of motor neuron disease.
Right.
Do you know Dr. Dane Goodenow?
I do, actually. I'm having a Parkinson's conference at the end of the month, and we had a few conversations with him trying to get him to come speak, but his schedule was already full. But we're covering some of his plasmology stuff in the conference.
Yeah, that's good. That's good, because I think those are important, the plasmalogens that people don't really know about, and those can really help. Anyway, I'm sorry that we got off on a tangent.
No, that's okay. That's what we do here. Sometimes we go off in lots of different topics.
What's the microbe that makes plasmalogens? Again, I forgot.
Well, bifidobacteria make plasmalogens, but I think most people do not know. So Bifido-adolescentis does not make plasmologens. I have to go back and find the research on that, but I had a discussion with some different people about it, because if you look at some probiotics, use Bifido-adolescentis, and it doesn't make plasmalogens. And it was interesting to me in our Parkinson's microbiome data, Bifido-adolescentis was higher in Parkinson's.
Huh.
And Bifido-adolescentis is one of the few bifidobacterias that is resistant to glyphosate. So I think that maybe, in exchange for resistance to glyphosate, it gave up its ability to make plasmalogens or something. I don't know.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mary has another question. I don't.
Yeah, yeah. You guys are talking about Parkinson's and bacteria for different things. What? I have neuropathy, peripheral neuropathy in my feet. Any knowledge on that, or a functional medicine doctor that would help me with that? It is getting better since I started my carnivore diet, but if there'd be something else to speed the process along, that'd be great. I know it's in the myelin sheaths are involved in the peripheral neuropathy being destroyed.
I mean, copper, I'm telling you, like copper is one of the main things required for a healthy myelin sheath. And
I take 4 milligrams a day. You think that's adequate?
you know, that's a really good question, because last week I was with, I was in Florida with a friend of mine and a friend of hers, and the friend of hers takes a high level of, she follows Jason Hummel. I'm not a Jason Hummel fan, but he has a Facebook page, I think. And her comment was, if you take too little, all it does is stir up the system. You have to take enough to solve the problem. So she does some kind of pulsing protocol. I have to dig into it a bit more, but kind of what she was saying did make sense. And she actually had melanoma, and that was one of the things that she did. She followed that protocol to address her melanoma, and then she had some other kind of, I can't remember what the topical thing she did, but she had a large melanoma in her shoulder.
And she was able to cure it with.
Well, I don't know the total protocol. We didn't go into the total protocol. I know is that subsequently she has stayed on this copper protocol.
Well, I remember when Morley was on our program here to call, he told me I needed to take, I think 4 to 6, but I don't remember.
I think Rita has an answer for you. I think she's raising her
Yeah,
hand.
I couldn't prescribe without knowing you. But since you know about your myelin, that's what the glia does. There's glia and neuro in the plasmalogens. And so it definitely myelinates you. So you might want to follow Martha when she gets Dr. Goodenow on, because he really explains that.
Okay.
So, he does MS, he does all the motor neuron diseases, but one of the things I will tell you, the plasmalogens very quickly will myelinate you.
So that would be like the bifidobacteria, or how else
Well, no, it's actually a.
Yeah, whatever, Martha, I didn't know that, but, if Martha thinks, because she studied all these bacteria, feels that it, and you will be looking into Dayan and see what he has to say. And I think that's actually a good question for Dayan. If you could just take the bacteria, Martha, do you think that's good enough and not have to take something like a glia?
I think it's complicated, because once the microbiome gets messed up and you don't have good bifidobacteria and you've got kind of a whole thing going on, you may need to take a plasmalogen type supplement to kind of get back on track.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, while you're trying to address your microbiome. I did post his YouTube channel here in the chat for anyone if you want to. He does fabulous YouTube videos explaining the research, and so that's definitely
because some people don't need what because I've experimented so much. I have some people with ALS, like he wants everybody, to be on glia and the neuro. And I've had people at ALS do fantastic on just the glia. Like, so, you really have to know the person. That's why, Mary, I could never say you need 3 to 4 milligrams of copper.
Right.
And we're talking about copper, and the research on copper is unbelievable. There is an expert, I don't really know his name. You could look like you have low copper and you really have high copper.
Right.
So it's like a whole field in itself, copper.
It's the same thing like iron. You look
That's
like
right.
you're
You
anemic,
look, that's
but you're
exactly
really-
it. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, Martha, that's exactly it.
So what I need is a good functional medicine doctor who does this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, and testing.
Yeah.
Because you'll get like maybe you'll go to your GP and they test iron, ferritin. It's not going to be correct in your case.
Right.
Yeah, it's not going to help you in your case.
Yeah.
And actually, in the conference I'm having at the end of the month, one of the things I think Dr. Ninham is talking about, copper that's, I'm going to say hiding. It's not hiding, but it's in the copper is in the mitochondria where it's not being measured. It can't be measured.
Right.
So, we don't have in a number of cases, we really don't have good ways to measure stuff. And you can measure ceruloplasmin, which is a measure of the most important copper protein in the body, but the measure that in the blood test for ceruloplasmin does not tell you if it's actually loaded with copper or not. It just measures. So it could be
Not helpful.
empty shells, basically.
Not good. All right. Thank you.
And
So-
Martha, this is the first time that I got anything from you. Make sure I'm on your list. Okay? Because I would have been jumping on here much earlier. So I thought this as I finished work. So I didn't get to hear, I just got to hear the questions and I mean, I pretty much know about circadian rhythm and all the things that she was talking about, but I just would not like, I don't want to miss this. So I just got it today, one thing from you. So,
I don't know what, well, so there was this separate mailing list, and the last two times I said, I think I've talked to enough people who say, how come I'm not getting this message? And so I just said, send it to the people who get the newsletter.
Okay.
And if they don't want it, they'll they can come back and let us know. And so the last two times we tried to send it out to our larger list.
Good. I'm glad you did.
So I'm trying to do that. And we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
So I think that's it for our questions. So maybe we can all get outside for the last bit of sunlight and fix our circadian clock for the night. How's that sound?
Sounds really good.
Sounds great.
I'm headed out.
All right. Thanks for coming.
Before we do that, Martha, can I ask you just another quick question? Sorry. So there are, I mean, like where I am, I know it's very trendy to talk about just get outside, just do this, just do that. I mean, but that can create other issues if you're concerned about, safety or just being exposed or whatever. And so I'm wondering how helpful other things are. Like I have something called a Happy Light that Verilux put out. Have you ever heard of this?
I have, because I had somebody who worked for me who sort of had seasonal affective disorder.
Right.
He had one on her desk.
Right. So there's that sort of thing. And then like grounding mats that, if you're not getting outside and putting your feet in the soil, grounding mats have been, and I don't know. I have a Happy Light. I keep it on during the day. When the time gets to like 5:30 or 6, I turn it off. And the grounding mat, I just have around, and I just ground when I feel like it. But are you sure you have clean electricity in your grounding mat? Yes, I've tested it. Okay, because I found I had a grounding mat and it was causing me problems.
And
No, I got a tester and it was, and yeah, it is decent. I don't know. I mean, anyway, do you think that these things can help, or are they just so much
well,
noise?
I don't know. They might help, but nothing's going to help like the real sunshine. And the other thing I'm going to tell you, Karen, and you're probably not going to like it, but that television and the electromagnetic waves is what's causing your sleep problems. Turn the TV off.
What?
I said, turn the TV off. That TV.
I can't hear you.
Yes, you can.
You wasted your money on your grounding mat and your light because you won't turn your TV off.
Well, the TV goes off. I have it on a timer, so it doesn't stay on all night. It goes off after.
I have learned my lesson, Karen. I don't turn on my TV after 8 o'clock at night. And I'm trying to turn my iPad and everything else off by 9 because I go to bed at 10:30. So
it does make a difference. It really makes a difference. I've stopped. I maybe turn my television on once or twice a week, maybe for one show.
I already had mine on for the past 2 months.
It's
you miss so much. Like I saw Wolf Hall, The Mirror and the Light, and other things. And
I don't miss anything. That's great. I don't like it.
Electromagnetic waves from a television are definitely disrupting, lots of things. So
yeah.
Danielle, do you still have your hand up, or is that up from before?
Thank you, Martha.
No, I was just going to chime in about the grounding mat and the fact that, most of those grounding mats are plugged into the electric grid. And so therein lies part of the problem with the dirty electricity. But then she had said that her electricity was clean and that she had metered it. But the other problem is that, you were talking about the architecture, all the frequencies. Yeah. What was the name of that? Architecture of radio? No, what was it?
Architecture of radio. You probably can't really see it here. It's kind
of. Okay. Yeah. Well, so the thing is that when you ground yourself, now you have made yourself bigger, and thus all of those electromagnetic frequencies that are just flying around in the air are now coming to you to go to ground. They're going through your body. And so in theory, it sounds like a great idea, but in practice, it can actually be detrimental to the body. So I just wanted to share that. And if she wants information about that, is to look at Brian Hoyer, Shielded Healing.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll check it out. I don't feel like it's harming me, but I don't know. We'll see.
You're not sleeping well, right?
But I wasn't sleeping well before the grounding mat.
So here's an interesting thing too, because you said you have a pulsed electromagnet, and that people get great results, I think, a lot of times with those PEMFs, but it's technology,
right?
And, our bodies are made for nature. And was interesting, I was talking to a doctor about probably 2 weeks ago. He had 2 months ago, he got a shingles outbreak, and he was just non-functional for about a month and a half. And so then when I finally talked to him, he said, well, it was a self-inflicted wound. I said, how's that? And he said, well, I was trying out this pulsed electromagnetic device that you could, like a wearable on your arm. And he put it on his arm, on his left arm, and basically wore it 24 hours a day for a week and got shingles because he stressed his body. It's, these technologies stress our bodies in ways that are unnatural.
Okay.
So while it might be beneficial to do that periodically, it might not be beneficial to sleep on it every day.
Got it.
Say hi.
How, this call got too long. How long do you need to ground when you go outside? I haven't done that much research about it.
I mean, some people will tell you 30 minutes to an hour. I mean, I go out for probably first thing in the morning, I go out for 10 minutes barefoot. But, you know, that's me. There, I mean, there's a movie I think called Grounding or Earthing, or Earth website's really good with information on that. And
I'll have to look into it. I heard something about going when you go outside in the morning for that morning sun, it also helps dampen your cortisol and bring it down so it doesn't, I don't know, doesn't continue to skyrocket or something. I don't know.
Well, and more, I think I don't know, I can't remember if she mentioned this in the book or not, but I know I've talked to other people about coffee, like not drinking your first cup of coffee as soon as you get up in the morning and waiting an hour to an hour and a half before you have that cup of coffee. I haven't gotten half yet.
Never gonna happen.
But I have started kind of pushing that out. And I have noticed since I started pushing it out, I often actually don't finish the cup of coffee.
Oh gosh.
And when I drink a cup of coffee, when I first get up in the morning, I'll always have two. So if I wait, so that's kind of interesting too. And I'm one of these people that if I'm going to have coffee, I darn well better have it before 12 o'clock because I'm a slow metabolizer and it's still there at bedtime if I've said it.
I have to stop drinking caffeinated coffee altogether.
Caffeine is a drug, and you know, and I find it interesting too because it's really pushed in the biohacking space. And I actually just wrote a piece on this term of biohacking, and like, why would you don't want your computer to be hacked? Why would you want to hack your body? And so this whole terminology and the way this whole industry has grown up about hacking your body. And like Rita was talking about the words you use. I mean, if you're using words that I'm hacking my body, I mean, what is that saying?
Well, Martha, I have to go to these conferences. And they say to me, and Martha, they say to me, you must be an amazing biohacker. You know all these things. I don't buy any of those things. And why? Because the illness I had, if I went Carlin, if you think that doesn't bother you, the illness I had, if I went in front of a refrigerator, I felt the waves. If the microwave went on, put on, and I just was in a corner of the room, it was like I was in the ocean.
Right? Not Waco Hall, it's at the other place, right?
I'm muting her. Hang on. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I literally, Karen, was so low and not vibrating. You're as healthy as your vibration. We could talk about the body in terms of biochemistry, physics, the body electric. This one guy was finishing another book, The Body Electric. They came after him. My sister was trying to help him with it, and we are electric. So we are as good as our vibration. Mine was collapsed. It was a stick figure. So I didn't have any of that energy coming out. So I'd run past the refrigerator. You know, I wouldn't say like, oh, well, she had this EMF disease. No, I'd had everything. You know, I just had to stay in a bubble. And you know, as I got well, and it was mostly due to a misdiagnosis and being drugged. And that when that happens, they just keep throwing more and more drugs at you. You don't know better, but you do know better. Like Martha, your husband, you knew that you were going to say, oh, I'm not going this way anymore.
Right.
You know, I mean, they literally, I was on death's door before I met Dr. Ray, who was the environmental doctor. I was literally, he said to my husband, she shouldn't be here according to her tests. And, you know, she's living on willpower, you know, but if you think, Clarendon, that that's not bothering you, I got to place my hand on a rock and feel the vibration. You think that's inanimate? Nothing is.
No, I don't think it is, but I also think people have different sensitivities to
Right.
EMFs, to light, to, I mean, so I'm not going to buy into that for me because
No,
I
no,
mean,
no.
I'm a
I-
healthy
no,
person.
no, no, no.
And
I'm not
going to, I
saying
don't
that.
even want that in my consciousness.
No, no, no. I know that. I know
Yeah.
that.
So,
But I'm
for
just
the
saying
record.
this, there is
So-
enough studies that tell you, even if you're a healthy being, you know, if you're going to have everything, like Martha says, she shuts her router off, right? It's recommended in studies. You could be as healthy and have a great immune system, but it's recommended to shut that router off.
I mean, everybody makes their own choices, Karen. So
Everybody, yes,
yeah,
exactly.
They do, and we're talking about this stuff. I mean, you know how many people are walking around eating the standard American diet, plugged into everything all day, and some look at Warren Buffett. The man is 90s. I don't know how. I mean, I don't. I mean, what is he doing? He's doing everything wrong. The man should have been dead 50 years ago.
Oh, you don't want to know what he's doing.
I know what he's doing. It's McDonald's and Diet Coke, you know, but and light and everything, you know, but somehow he's 97. Go figure.
Yeah. That's like the ice cream eating 97-year-old smoking lady.
Yes,
But
exactly.
but she wakes up every day and she's grateful. So like back to our mental attitude and gratitude and, you know, our focus on that. And I do think like we try to do education here so that people are aware of these things. And I talk a lot about, you know, I'm not trying to make you scared of something, but I'm trying to make you aware and conscious so that you can make informed decisions for yourself. And no doubt there's a huge body of research on all of these electromagnetic devices. And we did the electric rainbow in the book club. That was another one of those books I think I was the only person who read, and he didn't come talk to us. So, but you know, that has like 100 pages of references on, you know, all the stuff that electromagnetics are doing to us. And I think that may be one of the largest contributors to our health problems. That, you know, what do you do if you live in a city? I mean, you know, you can turn but like if you're in an apartment complex or something, I mean,
Right. What do you do?
My son has that Faraday cage, but I'm not even sure sleeping in a Faraday cage is a good idea because you are supposed to get signals. So, you know, then when you shut off all the signals, but anyway, it's, you know, it's food for your thought, Karen, and you can take it or leave it. You know, nobody's trying to give you a hard time, but I think I probably sound like I was giving you a hard time over the TV, and I apologize.
Oh no, that's okay. I mean, I'll probably still. I need the TV to go to sleep. Frankly, I need to hear the noise. I don't need the picture. I just need the audible. So that's
You know, my mother had her TV on a timer, and she needed the background noise. You could try like a little white noise machine, but I don't know.
I have that too. Green noise, TV, music, it's all there.
Yeah.
But thank you for entertaining my question at the last hour. I appreciate it.
Okay. I don't know. There's still 2 hands up, but I think both of you have asked your questions. But if not, speak now or forever hold your peace because I'm about to shut it off. Okay. Good night. Have a
Thanks,
great one, and
Martha.
We'll see you next time.
Martha. Good night, all.
It
Thank
was
you,
great,
Martha.
Thank
Thanks,
you. It
everyone.
was terrific.